Okay, welcome to this bonus chapter, chapter number 8. In this, we will talk about some tips which will help you in some troubleshooting. We'll talk about some misconception that people have been carrying with them for years in Wi-Fi, and I'll also try to cover some particular scenarios where but all in different videos. Yeah, scenarios where you can actually get to know about some specific issues that might come in the Wi-Fi and how to really approach those scenarios. But in this video, we'll talk about misconceptions. Me being in the Wi-Fi for almost 12 years now, I've seen a lot of customers, a lot of partners, a lot of people in the Wi-Fi world carry some misconceptions with them because maybe some things work for them, sometimes, and then they've been carrying that forward with them ever since. But they're not always true. So I'm going to uncover a lot of them here, and then probably I won't be able to cover, or I should say, uncover all of them. But I'll try to cover or uncover as much as I can in this video, and hopefully can give you a good idea as to how to approach certain issues. So the first and the foremost misconception is if there's a coverage problem, increase the power of an access point. It's always going to be good for the network. Okay, more power to AP, better for network. And I think if you've seen all the videos in this chapter by now, you know that that is not true. Do not do that, right? You can have a scenario where there'll be the coverage cells can become so large that there can be a hidden node problem, which is very common with high power APs. A high power AP and a low power client can actually have a problem where you're not able to send traffic, or the frames get corrupted, and the ACK is not sent, and then the retransmissions will happen. That's also a very common scenario. A lot of overlap between two coverage cells can have roaming issues as well, right? If you remember from the roaming video, too less coverage cell, too less overlap is a problem, and too much overlap is also a problem. So more power to the AP, better for the network, is not true at all. So do not follow this mindset, and do thorough analysis before you think about increasing the power. And the rule of thumb is somewhere around 1/3 of maximum power of the AP. Put that as the transmitting power of an access point. Okay. The second rule is, or the misconception I would say, is that 5 gigahertz is always better than 2.4 gigahertz, right? This is something that I would say most of the Wi-Fi world carry this thought, that yes, 5 gigahertz is mostly better. It is not 100% true. It is not always better. Okay, this is the keyword. Yes, in throughput, you'll get more throughput. You've got better data rates. You've got channels which are non-overlapping. Yes, that's all true. So 5 gigahertz is better in a lot of sense, but it is not always true. And I'm going to give you some examples. One is, if I have a client that only supports clients that support only 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz is not going to be good for them. Okay, so make sure you have an SSID that supports 2.4 and 5 both for them to work. Okay, now, and also one more thing, if the clients support only 2.4, which means they'll be able to not even see the SSID if it's only broadcasting on 5 gigahertz, right? So it's better to have a little less performance than to have the clients not even connect at all. So in this scenario where the clients only support 2.4, only 5 gigahertz is not a good option. So deploy the SSID on both 2.4 and 5, right? Now another point is, in most of the scenarios where the customer is not very keen to spend a lot of money, 2.4 gigahertz radios can penetrate the walls better, right? Because 2.4 has less frequency, so high wavelength, right? I'll just show that to you once again. As you know, frequency is equal to inverse of wavelength. So frequency is less, which means wavelength is more, which means it can penetrate through walls a lot better than 5 gigahertz. So in scenarios where customer is not very keen to deploy a lot of access points, you want to make sure you can reach as far as possible. Of course, by telling the customers about the caveats as well of the speeds and throughput. But yeah, so this is in these scenarios, some scenarios, only 5 gigahertz is not the way to go. Talk to the customers. Sometimes we're so blinded by the thought that 5 gigahertz is good. We only deploy SSID on 5 gigahertz, which mostly is okay. But in some scenarios like these, you might want to just go and check with the customer and then take an informed decision, right? So this is a very common misconception that people have. Please do not make this mistake. Now, another misconception is a lot of vendors really brag about their radio resource management, right? That is RRM, and how radio resource management is a super tool that they have, and that's all true. It's a great tool that to have. However, the misconception is that RRM can take care of the network which is deployed without a site server done. Okay, this is absolutely false. RRM isn't a substitute of a bad design or no design at all. RRM is not going to be a substitute for a bad design or a no design. You've got to make sure you have a site server done before deploying a network. RRM takes care of TPC, transmit power control, and DCA, dynamic channel allocation, but it will not take care of a network which in which there was no site server done. You can kind of make sure that RRM does help in some environmental changes that happen around it, or some physical changes that happen around the network or in the network. Off late, probably in the next few months, if there are some things that are changed in the network, RRM can still adjust to that. But if there is no site server done, or if there was a very bad design done, then RRM is not a substitute for that at all. Most vendors will say things like this sometimes during when they go and sell when they want to go and sell their stuff. But please don't fall for these. There is no substitute for a site survey. You've got to do a site survey before a network is deployed, to make sure that things are going fine. Okay, so a good design is absolutely irreplaceable. Okay, you've got to do that. Let me just write that down so that you don't forget. A good design is irreplaceable. There has to be a design done. Okay, this is another misconception. Okay, now the fourth one is, now in a lot of data sheets of the access points, you will see the radios can support one radio supports 256 clients association, right? Which is true. Theoretically, it's absolutely true. Now, the misconception is, when customers buy access points, they think one of my access point or one radio, and one AP has two radios, which means I can connect approximately 512 clients per AP. Theoretically, it is absolutely right. But should I do this? Absolutely not. Okay, do not let customers fall for this. Explain them, tell them the reality that yes, my AP can accept 256, or my radio can accept 256 association requests and can grant them association. But as we move along to higher number of clients on an AP or a radio, the performance will start to degrade, because the throughput is shared between the clients, right? Wi-Fi is definitely a shared medium. So throughput will be shared. Now imagine 150 clients sharing 1 gig of speed, 1 gig of throughput coming out of the AP. That's going to be a challenge. Or 150 on one radio, let's say 200 300 clients on an entire AP, is going to be a big problem. So do not, theoretically yes, it can support, but practically do not let networks have more than around 40 clients for data per AP, 20 clients for voice and video, as I suggested that in the other video also that I made. So this is a very, very important misconception that a lot of customers all over the world have. Please make sure you tell them the reality, correct them if they think otherwise. This is going to help you save a lot of time and effort with the customers once the network is deployed, because I've seen issues where customers are told that yes, their AP supports by vendors, that their AP supports around 512 clients per AP, and then when the network goes live and they have 100 clients on the AP, the performance is absolutely terrible, and then the clients or the customers don't know what to do because they feel they were fooled, which is not true, because theoretically the AP does support 512 clients, but the reality is something else on the ground. So please tell them the reality, right? Another thing is that another misconception is that a lot of customers don't understand the contention mechanism. If the client is on data rate of 54 Mbps, let's say it's on .11a protocol, according to the users or the customers, throughput also should be 54 Mbps. That is not true. It's not going to be 54, because Wi-Fi works. Wi-Fi is a shared medium. It's a half duplex medium. There is contention happening in the medium. The Wi-Fi in the Wi-Fi world, there's one client connected on an access point in all good conditions. Throughput will approximately be around 22 Mbps to 23 Mbps per if there's only one client on an access point on .11a protocol in ideal scenario. Okay, you need to tell the customer about contention, and then half duplex. A lot of customers don't understand this, so you've got to spend some time, teach the customer, educate the customer. This is going to help you again when you troubleshoot scenarios. The customer would understand if you tell them that this is expected. Sometimes when the throughput goes low, they run into a lot of they get anxious and then they take it out on you. But yeah, it's good that you tell them in advance as to what is the right way to see an access point. And then this is all good knowledge for you as well, because when you troubleshoot, you at least should know that if my data rate is 54, throughput cannot be 54. You've got to know that as well. And again, these things, there is a lot of light that I put on all these points, on all these points in the other course. So if you want, you can explore that as well. Now, the other 3 points are kind of connected, so I'm going to put them in one. Okay. My Wi-Fi client is not authenticating on 802.1x. My Wi-Fi client is not getting a DSCP address. My Wi-Fi client is not able to go to the internet. I have seen almost every single time when these issues are seen, it's always a Wi-Fi problem from the customer side. People troubleshooting, always a Wi-Fi issue. Absolutely wrong. It could be, but mostly it's not. Okay, understand this. I mean, since when I was in TAC and then I moved to consulting and then I moved to a pre-sales role, even till date right now, I get customers who think my .1x failing is a Wi-Fi issue on a Wi-Fi client. Okay, I'm not able to get the IP address. It's a Wi-Fi issue. It's not. Okay, it's not. It could be. I'm not saying there's a 100% possibility, but it's a very rare chance, and you may not run into it. So I'll tell you what to do. In .1x, there are 3 things which are involved. One is the supplicant, which is the Wi-Fi client. Okay. Then comes the authenticator, which is the WLC or the access point where there are no WLCs available. Then comes the authentication server, which is the radius server. Okay. When the authentication is happening between the supplicant and the authentication server, the authenticator acts as a pass-through. You are just the authenticator is acting like a portal. The communication happens between the supplicant and the AS. Okay, so you need to do this. If the client is failing authentication, it's a very simple task. Take the debugs or take the packet captures and check why is the authentication server sending a reject to the client. The reason will be mentioned in the Radius server logs. Do not just assume it's a Wi-Fi issue. It's mostly not. Okay. In fact, the AP has, or a WLC has a very little role to even play in this. It's either the client, maybe something is not configured well, or it's the authentication server, something is not configured right on that. Okay, so check for this. Do not blame Wi-Fi for this. It's not a Wi-Fi issue. Other is, let's say my Wi-Fi client is not getting a DHCP server. The number one and the first thing I would do, and this is the first thing that you all should do if the client is not getting a DHCP server, IP address. Let's say we have a VLAN number 10 on Wi-Fi and SSID is SSID 1, and my client is not getting an IP address on this VLAN. The first thing I would do is connect a wired client on VLAN 10. Bring a laptop, connect a cable from the switch onto the laptop, see if it gets an IP address or not. Out of 100 times that I have troubleshot this issue, at least 90 times the wired client also did not get an IP address. Wireless, always remember this. Wireless is just an extension of the wired network. Okay, always remember this. If my .1x is failing on the Wi-Fi and you're not getting anything on the, you don't want to do this step first, check the same behavior on the same VLAN on the wired side. You will see, if you see something similar, if you see the wired client also failing, then we need to figure out why the wired client is failing. The Wi-Fi will work if wired works. Okay, so you should, these are all troubleshooting misconceptions that we've had, and I'm also giving you some tips on the side on how to troubleshoot these things. So always, so keep an eye on this. Check for the VLAN on the wired. You should, if you get an IP address there and not getting an IP address on the wired side, wireless side, check for a policy that may have been in place, or someone might have created a policy on the WLC or an AP to stop DORA from working. Check that, and you're gonna be, I would say, more often than not, you'll solve the issue there and there, right? So don't spend hours and hours on troubleshooting these silly issues, and going in the wrong direction. Going in the right direction is what matters. Troubleshooting is all about isolation. It's, if you do the isolation right, your half the job is done. Okay, and the other is I'm not able to go on the internet. Not able to hit the internet. Let's say again VLAN 10 SSID, not able to hit the internet. What should we do? The same thing we did on DHCP, right? And authentication. Check for wired client on VLAN 10. See, the VLANs have whether on the wired or the wireless, the attributes are pretty much the same. So all the things that a wired VLAN can do, mostly wireless VLAN also can do, if there are no other specifically defined policies on the Wi-Fi. So if Wi-Fi is not working, check for the same behavior on the wired on the same VLAN. If that is the case, then yes, you need to go and fix the wired first. Maybe something at the back end or in the firewall or something else you need to check, where the privileges are not even allowed on that VLAN. If I'm not able to access some server on the Wi-Fi, check for that same behavior on the wired, because a lot of times the wired VLAN also is not allowed to access that server or the database or the internal file transfer, they're not able to do. So it could be that the VLAN itself is not supposed to do that. Okay, so check for those things. More often than not, you'll fix the problem. These are all the misconceptions that a lot of people carry. They all think it's the Wi-Fi issue, but it's not. You need to know how to, when the issues start to come, there'll be a lot of people on top of you who will tell you, what to do, what not to do. You need to maintain a calm mind. You need to know what you're doing is right, and follow follow some right steps, go in the right direction, and then I think half your issues will be solved there and then, right? Anyway, this was good. This was all I had to cover, and trust me, these are not all the misconceptions. I've covered around 6, and then this one DSCP was 7, and then the internet was kind of 8. So there are more, but I'm going to leave you, right here with 8 of them. And in case you want to understand about this more, you can always ping me on LinkedIn. I'll be available, and I'll be happy to, take some questions there as well if you want. And I mean, yeah, hopefully this was helpful. I mean, I still carry these with me whenever I go into a call and try to troubleshoot. Hopefully you will also benefit from this video. I'll create the next video with some tips on how you can approach the troubleshooting scenarios, and what to do, what to check to make, so that you can save some precious time and effort on that, right? Okay, thank you very much. See you in the next video.